Following the return of the civil rule in 1999, the People's Democratic Party (PDP) was backed by military bigwigs to emerge as the ruling party. The party assumed power in 1999 with the election of former President Olusegun Obasanjo and remained in power until 2015 when it lost power to the All Progressive Congress (APC). During the years, it occupied the seats of power in Aso Rock Villa. In Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory (FCT), the party, which prides itself as the biggest and largest in Africa, was led by three different presidents. They are Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, late Alhaji Umar Yar'Adua, and Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. Following the death of General Sani Abacha, the military ruler, and the pronouncement by General Abdulsalami Abubakar that the country would return to civil rule, political activists commenced in earnest. Within few months, several political parties emerged. Among them were the PDP, the Alliance for Democracy (AD), the All Progressive Grand Alliance (APGA), and others. While the PDP had its presence in all geopolitical zones, the AD held sway in the southwest, while the APGA was dominant in the southeast part of the country. Indeed, the kickoff of political activities came with a sort of relief and prompt because the expectations of Nigerians were very high. For being the first African military president to hand over power to a democratically elected president in the person of Alhaji Shehu Shagari in 1979, Obasanjo courted the favor and friendship of many countries. His international profile was considerably high as someone regarded as a champion of democracy. Owing to his vocal criticism of the late Sani Abacha, who seized power in 1993 in what can be regarded as a place coup, Obasanjo was imprisoned in 1995 for allegedly organizing a coup against the late military junta, but following Abacha's death in 1998, he was released. Obasanjo immediately announced his intention to run for the presidency on the platform of the PDP. He was declared the winner of the 1999 election with some 63% of the vote. However, there was widespread report of fraud and consequently the results were strongly criticized by many, particularly the Yoruba who had largely supported Olu Falaye, the presidential candidate of the AD. In his campaign and eventual swearing-in address on May 29, 1999, Obasanjo pledged to alleviate poverty, reduce government corruption, and establish a democratic system. He also promised to reform the military and the police. Notwithstanding religious and ethnic strife became a central concern during his presidency as many states in the Muslim-dominated North chose to adopt Sharia law. Obasanjo ignored the push to adopt Sharia, but this move contrasts sharply with his harsh response to ethnic strife in the South, and this earned him condemnation. Indeed, his overall authoritative style, widespread corruption that was still evident among government circles, and the emergence of a strong challenger in the incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari, a northerner and a former military head of state, were among the reasons that shrunk Obasanjo's power base heading into the 2023 presidential election. His saving grace was the support he received from unexpected quarters from his Yoruba kingsmen who did not back him in 1999. Thus, Obasanjo was elected for a second term in April 2003 by winning more than 60% of the vote cast. In 2006, Obasanjo came under domestic and international criticism for attempting to amend the constitution to allow him to stand for a third term as president. The proposed amendment was rejected by the Senate later that year. Some political analysts have described Obasanjo as an irreplaceable avatar on the Nigerian political scene. Arguably, they said OBJ, as is fondly called, is the most colossal political figure that best writes Nigerian politics at the moment. Some of his achievements, they said, was the bringing of Global System for Mobile Communications (GSM) to Nigeria in the year 2001 and resolution of the Bakassi Peninsula dispute between Nigeria and Cameroon with the former Cameroonian President Paul Biya on June 12, 2006. He established the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) and the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission (ICPC). He also strengthened the Code of Conduct Bureau to assist in the fight against corruption. Obasanjo also established National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control (NAFDAC) and the Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC). After his re-election in 2003, the Cold War between him and his vice, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, intensified. In 2003, the PDP took over 5 out of the 6 states in the southwest. It also claimed more states in the southeast zone, among others. During his time in office, the army was accused of adoption and killings of unarmed citizens. Observers said his administration favored political thuggery as the late Adelabu Adebibu and Chris Uba, who were officially recognized by the federal government, toppled constitutional elected state governors both in Oyo and Anambra State respectively. Also, the $16 billion electricity investment to boost electricity did not see the light of day. His administration also witnessed one of the most organized industrial actions when the Nigerian workers down-tooled for weeks. That was when Comrade Adams Oshiomhole was the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC). By the time Obasanjo left office in 2007, the economy had grown from 3% to 7% of the gross domestic product (GDP). The overall GDP growth for 2012 was 6.5% and projected at 6.75% for 2013, making Nigeria one of the fastest growing economies in the world then. The Nigerian foreign reserves was only $2 billion when he came into office in 1999. By 2007, when he left office, the reserve had risen to a whopping $43 billion. He secured $18 billion debt pardon from the Paris and London clubs and got Nigeria free of debt. With Obasanjo unable to run, Umaru Yar'Adua was handpicked as the PDP candidate for the April 2007 presidential election. He was declared the winner and was sworn in on May 29, 2007. Upon assumption of office, he announced 7-point agenda, which Segun Adeniyi, spokesperson to the then president, described as an economic blueprint, but a conceptual framework of the critical areas of our national life that the administration considered a priority. He was the first president in this era to publicly declare his asset, even though the law did not compel him to do so. This action earned him his presidency wider acceptance. But Yar'Adua was referred to as Baba Go Slow because of the slow pace of his administration. He became the president when oil prices were dropping during the global recession and Nigeria's economy was under tremendous pressure. Yet sources say that under his presidency, there was respect for institutions and constituted authority, and discountenanced all forms of impunity. The late president was an advocate of the rule of law, and his administration was noted, among others, for not meddling in the affairs of the National Assembly. For instance, his administration obeyed and ratified court orders. It allowed opposition parties to take over Edo and Ondo and Osun court rulings. Lagos State funds withheld by the previous administration were also released, among others. His administration stayed away from the running of the internal affairs of his party, the PDP. As part of the effort to resolve the agitation in the Niger Delta region, Yar'Adua's administration instituted the Niger Delta Amnesty Program. The idea was to bring equity and involvement of host communities in ownership of petroleum assets. The Niger Delta Ministry was also established. The late Yar'Adua was also very prudent. At the end of each financial year, all unutilized funds by ministry, agencies, and departments (MDAs) were hashed into a central bank account. The funds so collected were marked as opening balance in the subsequent budget. However, his administration identified 3 major constraints to provision of infrastructure, including land tenure, inadequate electricity, and agitation in Niger Delta. The administration also initiated a number of policies and made headway in resolving those constraints, such as infrastructure. He fought and reserved perceived wrong privatization deals, such as the sale of the country's refineries to some private sectors. But in July 2007, barely 2 months into office, Yar'Adua summoned the Bureau for Public Enterprises (BPE) to query the sale of Nigeria's refineries to Dangote and Co. Yar'Adua overturned these privatizations because he felt they were not carried out transparently. Many observers commended the late president for his stance against various kinds of sharp practices under privatization transactions. Although in the last days of his administration, the failure of his handlers to give Nigerians access to information on his health and allow a seamless transfer of power to then Vice President Goodluck Jonathan nearly destroyed the goodwill he enjoyed from the people. Goodluck Jonathan has been described as a man of destiny. He governed the country between May 6, 2010 and May 29, 2015. He was the first incumbent president in Nigeria history to concede defeat in an election. Prior to that, he served as vice president from 2007 to 2010 under the administration of Umaru Musa Yar'Adua and in oil-rich Bayelsa State as governor from 2005 to 2007. On May 29, 2011, he was sworn in as President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, becoming Nigeria's 14th head of state. In his inauguration address, declared that his government would focus on the transformation of the economy. This was dubbed the Transformation Agenda. He also promised to continue implementing his predecessor's 7-point agenda. Under Jonathan's administration, Nigeria rebased its GDP for the first time in over a decade, and Nigeria became the largest economy in Africa, overtaking South Africa and Egypt. He cited anti-corruption, power and electoral reforms as focuses of his administration. He emphasized that he came to office under very sad and unusual circumstances. Although observers said his presidency recorded some landmark achievements in infrastructure, power sector privatization, his government was largely described as corrupt. The economists said corruption flourished under the Jonathan administration because he let politicians and their cronies fill their pockets with impunity. His government introduced the Subsidy Reinvestment and Empowerment Program. In March 2014, President Jonathan inaugurated the 2014 National Conference. The conference was the first of its kind since the 2005 Political Reform Conference. It had 492 delegates that debated on key socio-political national issues, impending national development. Under his presidency, Ebola broke out and was properly managed. He also signed the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act into law in 2014. Jonathan's administration was heavily criticized for its failure to tackle insecurity.